The Boston Museum of Fine Arts has one of America's finest collections of antiquities, starting with this wonderful head of Zeus. It's impressive enough, very symmetrical and regular in the finest late classical style of mid-4th century BC. But even more impressive are its connections to two wonders of the world. It's thought to be modeled upon Phidias's famous statue of Zeus at Olympia. You can see its majestic features, that fine flowing beard. And the sculptor, whose name is unknown, may have worked at the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, also in the mid-4th century. We don't know where this comes from, but it's probably from Labranda in modern Turkey, not too far from Halicarnassus. There are many other wonderful pieces in this gallery. We have here part of a colossal muse or other draped female figure, but I want to focus on this side of the room upon the so-called Bartlett head. And here she is now. This is thought to be a portrait of Aphrodite, modeled, more or less distantly, upon the famous Aphrodite of Praxiteles. Now you can see that she has a very elaborate hairstyle. There's two bands holding her hair in place, making that ribbon-like flourish there in the center. This probably is Aphrodite, like her model. We aren't quite sure. We only have the head, which was designed to be slotted into a body of less pure marble. Either way, it's a wonderful example of the mid-classical style, inspired or heavily influenced by Praxiteles. Most of the Roman statues we see, or most of the marble statues we see in museums, are Roman. They're copies of Greek masterpieces. So it's a real pleasure and a change of pace to see a Greek original like this, especially here in America. Moving on, we have the so-called Boston throne. And here we are coming on it now. It's a rather puzzling piece, but the usual interpretation is that these three figures are, from left to right, Aphrodite, Eros/Cupid, and Demeter. Demeter is thought to be mourning for the loss of Persephone, who was condemned to live in the underworld for part of the year after eating those seeds with Hades. Here on the left, we have Aphrodite, who seems to be gesturing toward the central figure, Eros/Cupid. It's thought that he held, originally, scales made of bronze, in which he was weighing the number of months that Persephone had to spend in the underworld with Hades. You can see that the pans, there's the slots there for the bronze pans are depending toward Demeter, indicating that she's going to get most of the year, as opposed to Hades and Persephone being stuck down there in the grim underworld. Beside this, we have North America's largest classical statue, the so-called Juno. The head's not original, but the body is, and as you can see, it's really monumental, more than twice life-size. It's thought that this statue originally came from Rome, where it was discovered, and was part of a remodeling of the Temple of Pompey by Augustus in the 20s BC. After various historical vicissitudes, it's come here and is a rare example of truly monumental Roman sculpture here in the New World. To the side here, we have this wonderful sarcophagus, which shows the triumph of Dionysus. Dionysus, as the myth goes, spent a great deal of time in India, and he came back in triumph after bringing the whole subcontinent under his divine sway. So here we have his victory procession coming back to Greece. Dionysus himself is there on the left. You see him in this panther skin, and he's in a chariot being drawn by these two monumental elephants, who are very impressive. Here we have his retinue, the various satyrs and maenads and creatures of the forest. And here on the far side, we have Hercules, who is very, very drunk after having tried to compete with Dionysus in a drinking contest. Never a good idea to compete with the god of wine at what he does best. There are many other wonderful masterpieces here at the MFA, but this is a good sample of the goodies on display. Now some Roman stuff. We begin with this truly spectacular portrait of a late Republican Roman. We don't know his name, but we know just what he looked like, at least how he wished to show himself. Every detail is here, really, quite literally, warts and all. There's one below his left eye, and just spectacular verism here. Moving from the real to the ideal, we have Augustus, the first emperor. Now, Augustus reigned until he was nearly 80 years old, but his portrait never changed after the first years anyway. He's always has these smooth, ageless features, regular, divine, and that's exaggerated after he dies and is deified, so he becomes quite literally a god, and is shown in that guise here in this posthumous portrait. Here we have an empress, quite likely, in fact, most likely Livia, the wife of Augustus, done in basalt, an Egyptian stone, probably by an Egyptian sculptor. What's interesting about this sculpture, besides that it's done in basalt, which is very hard to sculpt, it's a very hard stone, is how it's been defaced. The noses have been smashed off. And if it remained in Egypt, as it probably did, that's explained by the fact that the Egyptians thought that you could kill a statue by smashing its nose off. And when Egypt became Christian, many statues were defaced this way as symbols of paganism. Septimia Severus right next to her here. A nice querist bust of Domitian. But the main event in this little corner is Elagabalus, everyone's favorite crazed 3rd century emperor. There are very few portraits of Elagabalus. I've only seen this one and the one in the Capitoline Museums in Rome. So this is a real treat. Notice his toga, which is wrapped in typical 3rd century manner with that broad band across the chest. Moving onward, we have a nice little clutch of imperial portraits. And I wanted to show you this Vestal Virgin, or rather likely Vestal Virgin, found not too far from Rome and sculpted from very fine Greek marble. It probably shows a retired Vestal who had served her 30 years and gone on to be a respected member of society and to have this very fine, probably funerary statue made of herself as a fine Roman matron. Almost done, but there are a few other things I wanted to show you on this side of the gallery. More imperial portraits, some spectacular hairstyles here. We have a woman imitating Livia's upturned bun there, and a fine mess of Flavian curls. But my favorite statue in this little corner is this one here. Now this shows young Commodus, son of Marcus Aurelius, in the guise of Hercules. You may recall the myth where Hercules, as an infant, had to wrestle snakes sent by Hera to kill him in his cradle. Here Commodus, either as a boy or as an adult, himself shown so retrospectively, is doing the same thing, fighting snakes and being shown as a hero, but with his portrait stuck on top of this infantile but already muscular body. This probably dates to the reign of Commodus as opposed to that of his father, when he was already obsessed with embodying Hercules and assuming the attributes of that hero as emperor. There's much, much more here in the MFA, but this gives you a good taste, I think, of the Roman gallery.